What if the Bible sitting on your nightstand is missing entire books? Not just a few verses or a footnote here and there. Entire books. Stories about angels, secrets about creation, and warnings about powerful beings that once walked the earth. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is history. Jude 1:14 quotes directly from the Book of Enoch, a text that most Western churches removed from their scriptures centuries ago. Yet one ancient church in the highlands of East Africa never removed it. They kept it. They guarded it. And what that church preserved changes everything we thought we knew about the God of Genesis. Most people assume the Bible has always contained the same books. They believe the 66 books of the Protestant canon are the complete and final word. But that assumption collapses the moment you learn that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has 84 books in its Bible. And those extra books do not just fill in minor gaps, they answer the biggest questions Genesis leaves open. In this story, we will move through 3 stages. First, we will discover what the Ethiopian Bible actually contains and why it matters. Then, we will meet the beings it describes, the Elohim, a word that does not mean what most people think it means. And finally, we will trace how these ancient truths reshape our understanding of who we are, why we are here, and what has been fighting against us since the beginning. And once we understand this first layer, the real story begins. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is one of the oldest Christian communities on earth. Its roots stretch back to the 4th century, and some traditions trace its origins even further, all the way to the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. That is not legend for decoration. It matters because it means the Ethiopian Church formed its scriptures before the Roman councils decided what books the rest of Christianity would use. When the Council of Laodicea met in the 4th century and began trimming the biblical canon, the Ethiopian Church was already isolated in the highlands, thousands of miles from Rome's reach. They had their scriptures. They saw no reason to change them. The result is the most complete Christian Bible in existence, 84 books. That includes every book in the Western Old and New Testaments, plus texts like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Shepherd of Hermas, and several others. These are not obscure scrolls found in a dusty cave. These are scriptures that shaped the earliest Christian theology, quoted by church fathers, referenced in the New Testament itself. The Book of Enoch alone is one of the most important documents in religious history. It describes in vivid detail what happened before the flood. It names the angels who rebelled. It describes the heavens Enoch visited. It reveals the punishments prepared for those who broke their covenant with God. And yet, most Christians have never read a single page of it. Why were these books removed? The standard answer is that they lacked authenticity or did not meet the criteria of inspiration. But that answer crumbles under scrutiny. Jude, an accepted book of the New Testament, quotes Enoch directly. How can a book be inspired enough to quote from, but not inspired enough to include? The real reasons were political. The early Roman Church wanted a streamlined message. Complex descriptions of celestial hierarchies, multiple ranks of spiritual beings, and detailed accounts of angelic rebellion made theology difficult to control. A simpler story was easier to manage. One God, one heaven, one hell, clean and simple. But the truth was never clean and simple. The Ethiopian Church knew this. They preserved what others discarded. And inside those preserved pages lies a portrait of creation that is far richer, far stranger, and far more powerful than anything the shortened Bible can offer. Subscribe if you want to understand the Bible at a level most people never reach. Because what comes next is the foundation of everything. The Book of Jubilees is sometimes called Little Genesis. It retells the creation story, but fills in gaps that Genesis skips over entirely. Where Genesis says God created the heavens and the earth, Jubilees describes the angels who were present at that moment. It names their categories. It describes their functions. It reveals that creation was not a solitary act by a single figure speaking into the void. It was a coordinated effort, a divine project involving an entire celestial administration. This changes the picture dramatically. Most people read Genesis and see one God working alone, a single voice commanding the universe into being with no help and no witnesses. But the Hebrew text itself hints at something different. The verbs, the pronouns, the grammar itself carries traces of a larger story, and the Ethiopian Bible makes that hint explicit. It does not whisper, it states it clearly. Creation had witnesses. It had participants, and those participants did not all agree on what should happen next. That tension, that disagreement among heavenly beings becomes one of the most important threads in the entire biblical narrative. It explains the fall, it explains the flood, it explains the division of nations, and it explains why the world still feels like a battlefield. The Ethiopian texts do not contradict Genesis. They complete it. They add depth and detail to a story that was compressed, edited, and simplified over the centuries. And once you read Genesis with those extra books beside it, you will never read it the same way again. The words on the page do not change, but your understanding of what they mean transforms completely. Like this video if you're beginning to see the Bible in a new light. The next chapter goes even deeper. Chapter 2, the Elohim and the Council of Creation. There is a single word in the Hebrew Bible that has caused more confusion, more debate, and more hidden truth than almost any other. That word is Elohim. In most English Bibles, it is translated simply as God. One word, singular. But here is what they rarely tell you. Elohim is a plural noun. It does not mean God in the singular sense. It means the gods, the powerful ones, or the divine council. And Genesis uses this word over and over again, not by accident, by design. Genesis 1:26 is the verse that breaks the illusion wide open. God says, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness." Us, our. These are plural pronouns. For centuries, theologians have tried to explain them away. Some say it is the royal we, a king speaking of himself in the plural. Others call it the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit speaking together. But the Hebrew text does not support those explanations cleanly. The word used is Elohim, a plural noun paired with plural pronouns, and the Ethiopian Bible, informed by the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, tells us exactly what that plural means. It means a council, a gathering of powerful celestial beings presided over by the Most High, working together to bring creation into existence. This is not a fringe theory. It is not a modern invention or a New Age reinterpretation. This understanding comes directly from the Hebrew text itself, the very language in which Genesis was originally written. Ancient Israelite religion, as scholars now increasingly recognize, operated within a framework that acknowledged multiple spiritual beings under one supreme God. Psalm 82 describes it openly. God stands in the divine assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. The Hebrew word for gods there is Elohim, the same word used for the Creator in Genesis. The Bible itself tells us there is a council, a gathering of powerful beings under the authority of the Most High God. The Ethiopian texts simply give us the full picture of who those beings are, what they do, and why some of them turned against the plan. The Most High God, the one above all, is not diminished by this. He remains the supreme authority, the source of all power, the architect of creation. But he chose to work through a vast administration of celestial beings. Think of it like a great kingdom. A king does not lose his authority because he has generals, advisors, and governors. He exercises his authority through them. That is what the Elohim are. They are the agents of divine governance, each one created with purpose, assigned a role, and given real power to act within their domain. The Book of Enoch describes these beings in extraordinary detail. Some stand before the throne of the Most High and never leave his presence. Others were sent out to oversee creation, to manage the natural world, to guide the development of nations. They are not all the same. They have ranks, they have jurisdictions, they have responsibilities, and critically, they have free will. That free will is what makes the entire biblical story possible, because free will means the possibility of rebellion, and rebellion is exactly what happened. Comment below what you think about this divine council. Do you believe one God worked alone, or does the idea of the Elohim make the Bible clearer? Let us know your thoughts. When Jubilees describes the creation week, it lists the categories of angels made on the first day: angels of the presence, angels of sanctification, angels of the elements, fire, wind, clouds, darkness, snow, hail, and frost. These are not decorations. These are officers in a celestial government, each one responsible for a specific function within creation. This paints a picture of creation as an orchestrated event, a symphony conducted by the Most High, with every section of the celestial orchestra playing its designated part. The precision of it is staggering. Nothing was random, nothing was accidental. Every element of the natural world was placed under the care of a specific celestial officer who would maintain it according to the will of the Most High. The natural world, according to this account, does not run on autopilot. It is managed. Every storm, every season, every cycle of the earth has a celestial administrator behind it. The tides do not simply respond to the moon. The winds do not simply blow at random. Behind every natural phenomenon stands a being who answers to a being above, and that chain of command reaches all the way to the throne of the Most High. This explains passages in the Bible that seem strange without this context. When God asks Job, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" He is describing the moment of creation and the beings who witnessed it. The morning stars, the sons of God, these are the Elohim. They were there, they saw it happen, and they celebrated because the creation of the earth was part of a much larger plan. But not all of them celebrated for the same reasons. Some looked at humanity and saw potential. Others looked and saw a threat, because humanity was not created to be a pet or a plaything. Humanity was created to rule, and that promise of authority made certain members of the Elohim very, very uncomfortable. That discomfort became jealousy. Jealousy became opposition, and opposition became the war that has shaped every chapter of human history since the garden. Share this with someone who has never heard about the Elohim. This knowledge changes everything, and the next chapter reveals the exact structure of the heavenly kingdom. Chapter 3. The Architecture of Heaven. The Ethiopian Bible describes a universe far more layered and complex than most people have ever considered. When the average person thinks about the spiritual realm, the picture is simple: heaven above, earth below, God on a throne, angels with wings. That is the children's version. The Ethiopian texts, particularly the Book of Enoch, reveal something that looks more like a vast government with multiple departments, districts, and chains of command. Heaven is not one place. It is many places, and the beings within it do not all hold the same rank. Enoch's account of his journey through the heavens is one of the most detailed descriptions of the spiritual realm in any religious text. No other ancient source, biblical or otherwise, gives us this level of access to the inner workings of the celestial realm. It is as if Enoch was given a guided tour of the entire governmental structure of heaven and then told to write down everything he saw. He does not simply go to heaven. He travels through multiple heavens. Each one is distinct. Each one contains different kinds of beings. Each one operates under different rules. In the first heaven, Enoch sees the administrators of natural forces, the angels who control weather, seasons, and the movements of celestial bodies. In higher heavens, he encounters beings of increasing power and brilliance. And at the highest level, he stands before the throne of the Most High, a place so overwhelming that Enoch struggles to describe it in human language. This layered structure matters because it tells us something critical about how the universe actually works. There are ranks, there are hierarchies. Power flows downward from the Most High through layers of celestial authority until it reaches the physical world. Decisions made in the highest heavens ripple down through every level until they manifest on earth. This is why the Book of Enoch and the Ethiopian canon are so important. Without them, we see only the surface of the story. With them, we see the machinery behind it. The main categories of celestial beings described in the Ethiopian texts are striking in their diversity. At the highest rank are the seraphim. These are the beings closest to the throne of God. Isaiah 6 gives us a glimpse of them, crying out, "Holy, holy, holy," their very existence consumed by the presence of the Most High. They do not leave the throne room. Their purpose is worship, and their power is beyond anything else in creation. Below the seraphim are the cherubim. These are not the chubby babies you see in Renaissance paintings. The biblical cherubim are terrifying. Ezekiel describes them with 4 faces, 4 wings, and wheels within wheels covered in eyes. They are guardians, protectors of sacred spaces. They stood at the gate of Eden after the fall. They cover the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. Where the seraphim worship, the cherubim guard. Their presence marks the boundary between the holy and the common. No one passes a cherubim without permission from the highest authority. They are the locked gates of heaven, and their vigilance has never once wavered since the day they were created. Then come the archangels. These are the commanders of heaven's armies and the chief messengers of the Most High: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. The Book of Enoch names them and describes their specific duties. Michael leads the armies of heaven against the forces of rebellion. Gabriel delivers critical messages at turning points in human history. Raphael brings healing and restoration. Uriel guards the underworld and oversees the final judgment of the wicked. These are not interchangeable angels. They are specialists. Each one carries authority over a specific domain. Beyond these 4, the Ethiopian texts hint at other archangels with specialized duties, guardians of specific elements, keepers of divine records, and sentinels posted at the boundaries between heavenly realms. The celestial government was thorough. No corner of creation was left unattended. No responsibility was left unassigned. Yet the truth hidden in Scripture goes deeper. Below the archangels are the beings that will become the most controversial figures in the entire story, the Watchers. These are the angels assigned to observe humanity. Their original purpose was noble. They were stationed over the earth to watch over human development, to guide without interfering, to protect without controlling. They were observers, witnesses, guardians assigned to the most important project in creation, the growth of humanity toward its intended destiny. Their station was one of honor. To watch over humanity was not a punishment or a minor task. It was a privilege. The Watchers held front row seats to the greatest experiment in the cosmos, the development of beings who could bridge the gap between heaven and earth. But the Watchers had something that made them dangerous. They had free will. They could choose, and in a moment that shattered the order of creation, 200 of them chose wrong. That choice echoes to every page of the Bible, every war in human history, and every struggle you face today. The Watchers did not just disobey, they altered the course of everything. Subscribe now, because the next chapter tells you exactly what they did, and it is one of the most disturbing stories ever removed from the Western Bible. Chapter 4: The Watchers and the Fall from Mount Hermon. There is a mountain in the ancient world that carries a name heavier than its stone: Mount Hermon. It sits on the border of modern-day Lebanon and Syria. It is the highest point in the region, snow-capped and visible for miles. In the Book of Enoch, this mountain is the site of the most catastrophic rebellion in celestial history. The leader of this group was a being named Semiasa. Under him were 20 chiefs, each commanding groups of 10. These were not low-ranking spirits. They were powerful members of the celestial administration, beings with knowledge, authority, and capabilities far beyond anything humans possessed. And they came down, not because they were sent, not because the Most High commanded it. They came down because they wanted something they were never meant to have. They looked at human women and desired them, and they acted on that desire. The Book of Enoch is explicit about what happened. The Watchers took human wives. They entered into relationships that violated the boundary between the celestial and physical realms. This was not merely a romantic transgression. It was a breach of cosmic law. The spiritual and the physical were designed to remain separate in their current form. Humanity was meant to grow into its spiritual authority over time, through obedience, through partnership with God, through a process of maturation. The Watchers short-circuited that process. They brought the spiritual realm crashing into the physical without permission, without order, and without any regard for the consequences. But the relationships were only the beginning. The Watchers also taught humanity things that were never supposed to be revealed at that stage. Azazel, one of the chief Watchers, taught humans the art of metalworking for weapons and the creation of jewelry and cosmetics. This sounds harmless until you understand the context. Weapons meant organized warfare. Cosmetics and adornments, in that context, referred to arts of seduction and vanity that accelerated the corruption of human society. Other Watchers taught astrology, enchantments, the reading of signs in the clouds, and the cutting of roots for sorcery. They handed humanity advanced knowledge without the moral foundation to handle it. It was like giving a loaded weapon to a child. Like this video if you are starting to see why these books were hidden. The truth is uncomfortable, but it is still the truth. The result was chaos on a scale the earth had never witnessed. Human society, still in its early stages, was overwhelmed by knowledge it was not ready for. Communities that had been learning to farm and build were suddenly armed with the tools of war. Societies that were developing natural bonds of trust and cooperation were corrupted by arts of manipulation and deception. Violence exploded, corruption spread. The earth, which was meant to be a garden cultivated by humanity in partnership with God, became a slaughterhouse, and the worst consequence of all was biological. The union between the Watchers and human women produced offspring. These offspring were not normal human children. They were hybrids, part celestial, part human. The Bible calls them the Nephilim. Genesis 6:4 says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." The Nephilim were giants. The Book of Enoch says they grew to enormous size and consumed everything in their path. When the food ran out, they turned on humans. When humans could not satisfy them, they turned on each other. They consumed flesh and drank blood. The earth cried out under their weight. This was not a natural disaster. This was a manufactured catastrophe. The Watchers had introduced corruption into the very genetic fabric of humanity. The line between human and celestial was being erased, and with it, the entire plan of God for human development. The cry of the earth reached the heavens. The Book of Enoch describes how the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, looked down and saw the devastation. They brought the case before the Most High, and the verdict was severe. The Watchers were to be bound, imprisoned in darkness until the day of final judgment. Semyaza and his chiefs were chained in valleys of the earth, buried alive in spiritual prisons from which they would never escape until the appointed time. The Nephilim were condemned to destroy each other. Their physical bodies would perish, but their spirits would remain on the earth as unclean spirits, demons that would torment humanity until the end of the age. This is the origin of demons, according to the Ethiopian Bible. They are not fallen angels in the traditional sense. They are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of Watchers and human women. They have no bodies, they have no rest, and they roam the earth, seeking to inhabit, influence, and destroy. This understanding changes everything about how we think about spiritual warfare. These entities are not random. They have a history. They have a grudge, and they have been operating on the earth for thousands of years. But what comes next will shock you, because the judgment of the Watchers did not end the problem. It only moved it to the next stage. The flood was coming, and with it, a reset that was meant to give humanity a second chance. Whether that second chance succeeded is a question the next chapter will answer. Chapter 5. The Flood and the Second Beginning. The decision to flood the earth was not made lightly. The Book of Enoch makes clear that the Most High deliberated with his celestial council before issuing the command. The corruption of humanity had reached a point of no return. The Nephilim roamed the earth, consuming everything. The teachings of the Watchers had filled human hearts with violence and sorcery. The genetic line of humanity, the line through which God's plan was meant to unfold, was being contaminated beyond recognition. Something drastic had to happen, and so the floodwaters came. But the flood was not just a punishment. It was a rescue operation, Noah and his family were preserved because their bloodline had not been corrupted by the Watchers. Genesis 6:0 was perfect in his generations. That phrase has puzzled scholars for centuries. Was it about moral perfection? The Ethiopian text suggests something more specific. Noah's genealogy was intact. His genetic line was purely human. In a world where the boundary between celestial and human had been shattered, Noah's family represented the last thread of the original plan. If that thread broke, the entire purpose of creating humanity would be lost. The flood wiped the surface clean. The Nephilim perished. The civilizations built on forbidden knowledge collapsed into mud and water. But the problem was not entirely solved. The spirits of the dead Nephilim remained. They had no bodies to return to, so they became wandering spirits. The Book of Enoch calls them evil spirits. These entities would continue to plague humanity long after the flood waters receded. The physical giants were gone, but their spiritual legacy survived. Every culture on earth has stories of malevolent spirits, hauntings, possessions, and dark forces. According to the Ethiopian Bible, those stories trace back to a single source, the disembodied offspring of the Watchers. The archangels executed the sentence with precision. Raphael bound Azazel hand and foot and cast him into a pit of jagged rocks in the desert of Dudail, covering him with darkness until the day of judgment. Gabriel was sent against the Nephilim, turning them against one another until they destroyed each other by the sword. Michael bound Semyaza and his companions among the valleys of the earth, where they would remain imprisoned for 70 generations. The hierarchy of heaven moved with the decisiveness of a government restoring order after a coup. Every guilty party was identified. Every sentence was specific. Every punishment matched the crime. Noah stepped off the ark into a cleaned but not healed world. The land was fresh, but the spiritual battlefield remained, and humanity was about to face a new test. Without the Nephilim towering over them, without the Watchers handing them forbidden secrets, humans would now have to find their way on their own. They multiplied, they spread, they built, and for a brief, shining moment, they were united. One language, one people, one purpose. That unity would not last long. Share this with a friend who needs to hear this story. The connections between these ancient books are extraordinary. The post-flood world described in Genesis and expanded in Jubilees was fragile. The scars of what came before had not fully healed. The memory of destruction lingered in the bones of the earth and in the stories passed from father to son. Humanity remembered the old world. Traditions, fragments of knowledge, and stories survived the deluge. Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, carried with them not only their families, but also memories of what had been. Some of those memories were warnings. Others became temptations. The forbidden knowledge the Watchers had shared did not disappear completely. Traces of it survived in oral traditions, in practices, in the deep human curiosity that always reaches for what it should not touch. The Book of Jubilees records a disturbing detail. After the flood, the evil spirits began attacking Noah's grandchildren. They tormented them. They led them astray. Noah prayed to the Most High to bind all these spirits, and God commanded the majority of them to be imprisoned. But Mastema, the chief of the evil spirits, negotiated. He asked that 1/10 of the spirits be allowed to remain on earth under his authority. The request was granted. This means that even after the flood, a remnant of the Nephilim's spiritual legacy continued to operate on earth. The battlefield was reduced but not eliminated. Humanity still had enemies, and those enemies still had power. This 10th that remained became the source of ongoing spiritual oppression throughout human history. They did not rest. They did not forgive. They carried the rage of their destroyed Nephilim bodies and the cunning of their celestial fathers. They whispered in the ears of kings. They influenced the rise and fall of empires. They worked tirelessly to keep humanity divided, confused, and ignorant of its true purpose. The flood had reset the physical world, but the spiritual war continued without interruption, and the next great battle in that war was about to begin in a plain called Shinar, at the foot of a tower that reached for the sky. Yet the truth hidden in Scripture goes deeper. The flood was mercy dressed as judgment. It was not destruction for the sake of destruction. It was a surgeon cutting out a cancer to save the patient. The patient survived, but the cancer would find new ways to grow. And the story of that growth begins with the most ambitious construction project in human history. Chapter 6. The Tower of Babel and the Division of Nations. After the flood, humanity did something remarkable. They stayed together. They spoke one language. They shared one purpose. And they began to build. Not just houses or farms, they built a tower. Genesis 11 tells the story simply. The people settled in the plain of Shinar and said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves." On the surface, this sounds like pride, ambition, arrogance. But the Ethiopian Bible, combined with the Book of Jubilees, reveals a deeper layer to the story that changes its meaning entirely. Humanity had just survived the worst catastrophe in history. They had seen the Nephilim. They had witnessed the power of celestial beings. They knew that the world was governed not just by visible forces, but by invisible ones. And now, united and determined, they set out to do something about it. The Tower of Babel was not just a monument to human pride. It was an attempt to reclaim cosmic authority. Humanity was trying to reach the realm of the Elohim. They were trying to bridge the gap between earth and heaven, and they were doing it together, with one mind and one voice. This terrified the rebellious members of the Elohim. Unified humanity was a threat. Remember, humans were originally created to rule. They were designed to exercise authority over creation as partners with the loyal Elohim. If humanity ever regained that unity and directed it toward its original purpose, the power of the rebellious spirits would be broken. The division the fallen Elohim had worked so hard to create since the garden would collapse. And so, intervention was required. Genesis 11:7 records the response. "Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." Notice the plural again. Let us. This was not a single deity acting alone. This was a decision made in the celestial council. The Elohim acted together to scatter humanity across the face of the earth. Languages were confused. Communication broke down. The great project was abandoned, and humanity splintered into separate tribes, nations, and peoples. But the story does not end there. The Book of Jubilees adds a detail that most people never hear. After Babel, the nations of the earth were divided among celestial rulers. 70 nations arose from the descendants of Noah, and 70 angels were assigned to govern those nations. Each nation received its own spiritual prince, a member of the Elohim placed over that people to guide their development, shape their culture, and determine their trajectory. This is the system that defined the ancient world. Every nation had a god, not because humans invented those gods, but because actual celestial beings had been assigned authority over them. Deuteronomy 32:8 confirms this. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. The sons of God, the Elohim. The boundaries of nations were set according to the number of celestial rulers. This was a system of spiritual governance that operated behind the scenes of human history. Empires rose and fell not just because of armies and economics, but because of the decisions made by the spiritual beings assigned to oversee them. Subscribe for more hidden truths from the ancient scriptures. What you are hearing right now is only the beginning. Daniel chapter 10 pulls back the curtain on this system in one of the most revealing moments in the entire Bible. Daniel prays and fasts for 21 days. An angel finally arrives and explains the delay. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me. The prince of Persia was not a human king. It was the celestial being assigned to govern that nation, and this being was powerful enough to block an angel of God for 3 weeks. Only when Michael, the archangel, intervened was the message delivered. This passage reveals a stunning truth. The spiritual war is not abstract, it is territorial. Specific beings hold authority over specific regions. They resist the plans of God when those plans threaten their control. They fight to keep their nations under their influence. And this system, established after Babel, persisted for thousands of years. It shaped the ancient world. It influenced which nations prospered and which collapsed. It determined which peoples heard the truth and which were kept in darkness. But the Most High did not abandon humanity to this system. He reserved one nation for himself, Israel. The Book of Jubilees says that while the 70 nations were divided among the 70 celestial princes, God kept Israel as his own portion. No angel would govern them. The Most High himself would be their ruler. This is why Israel's story is different from every other nation. Their covenant was not with a celestial intermediary. It was with the supreme authority of the universe, and through that covenant, a plan was set in motion that would eventually break the entire system wide open. The division at Babel was not the end of the story. It was the setup for the greatest act of liberation in cosmic history. That act required a specific bloodline, a specific promise, and a specific moment in time, and the forces that controlled the nations would do everything in their power to prevent it from happening. Chapter 7. Bloodlines, Thrones, and the Covenanters of Power. The ancient world operated on a principle that modern people have largely forgotten. Authority was not earned through elections or merit. It was inherited through blood. Kings did not rule because they were the strongest or the wisest. They ruled because they claimed a divine right, a direct connection to celestial power, and according to the Ethiopian Bible, those claims were not always empty. The Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch both describe a world in which spiritual beings actively participated in human governance. After the division at Babel, the 70 celestial princes did not simply observe their assigned nations. They shaped them. They influenced their cultures. They inspired their religions. And in many cases, they entered into actual covenanters with human ruling families. These were not metaphors. They were concrete agreements. A celestial being would grant power, knowledge, and military success to a human dynasty. In return, that dynasty would maintain worship, rituals, and sacrifices dedicated to that being. This is why ancient kingdoms all had patron gods. Egypt had its pantheon, Babylon had Marduk, Assyria had Ashur, Greece had Zeus. These were not inventions of primitive imaginations. They were reflections of a real spiritual system. The gods of the nations were the Elohim assigned to those nations after Babel, and the kings who served them received real benefits. Military victories that defied logic, empires that lasted centuries, knowledge and technology that appeared from nowhere. The price was always the same: loyalty, worship, and the perpetuation of a system that kept humanity fragmented and under celestial control. Comment your thoughts on this. Did ancient kings truly have spiritual backing? The evidence is hard to ignore. The Ethiopian tradition adds a personal dimension to this that most people do not know. The Ethiopian royal line, the Solomonic dynasty, claimed direct descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This was not just national pride, it was a theological statement. Solomon was the son of David. David was the man after God's own heart, chosen by the Most High to establish a royal line through which the Messiah would come. The Ethiopian claim connected their nation to the Davidic covenant, the promise that through David's bloodline, a king would arise whose throne would last forever. This claim meant that Ethiopia saw itself as part of the central thread of biblical history, not a peripheral nation, not a footnote, a direct participant in the covenant that God made with David. The Kebronagast, Ethiopia's national epic, tells how the Ark of the Covenant was brought from Jerusalem to Ethiopia by Menelik, the son of Solomon and Sheba. Whether you accept this tradition as history or legend, its significance is clear. Ethiopia understood that bloodlines carried spiritual authority, and they positioned their entire national identity within the framework of God's covenant promises. But the covenant with David was just one thread in a much larger tapestry. Throughout the Old Testament, we see a pattern. God makes promises to specific families: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, David. Each promise narrows the focus. Each covenant gets more specific. The enemy noticed this pattern too. If you were a rebellious member of the Elohim, trying to prevent God's plan from reaching fulfillment, what would you attack? The bloodline, the family line through which the promise was supposed to come. And that is exactly what happened. Over and over, the promised line faced extinction. Famine drove them to Egypt, where they became slaves. Pharaoh ordered the murder of every Hebrew male child. In the days of the judges, Israel teetered on the brink of destruction multiple times. King Saul tried to kill David. Athaliah nearly wiped out the entire royal family of Judah. The Babylonian exile scattered them across the empire. At every critical moment, the bloodline of promise was one generation away from annihilation. And at every critical moment, the Most High intervened to preserve it. This was not coincidence. This was warfare. The spiritual forces that controlled the nations understood the prophecies. They knew that a descendant of David would one day break their power, destroy their system, free humanity from their control, and they fought with everything they had to prevent that descendant from ever being born. Every attempted genocide, every political assassination, every national catastrophe that threatened the line of Judah was part of a coordinated spiritual campaign to stop the coming king. Like this video, if these connections are blowing your mind, share it with someone who needs to see this. The final chapter reveals how it all comes together, but the bloodlines survived. Against every odd, through every disaster, past every ambush, the line of David continued, hidden sometimes, persecuted always, but never broken. Because behind the scenes, the loyal Elohim, the faithful members of the Celestial Council, were fighting too. Michael and his armies contended with the territorial spirits. Angels appeared at critical moments to warn, guide, and protect. The war was invisible to most human eyes, but it was constant, and it was building toward a single moment, a moment that would arrive in the most unexpected place, in the most unexpected way, through the most unexpected way, through the most unexpected person. That moment was the birth of a child in Bethlehem. And that child would do what no human, no angel, and no member of the Elohim had ever done before. Chapter 8. The mission that shattered the chains. Everything in this story has been leading to one moment. Every chapter of creation, every act of rebellion, every fallen watcher, every scattered nation, every protected bloodline, all of it converges on a single point in history. A baby born in an occupied territory. A carpenter's son from a nowhere town called Nazareth. The world did not notice. The Roman Empire did not care. But the Elohim knew. Every celestial being, loyal and rebellious, understood that something unprecedented had entered the physical realm. Jesus of Nazareth was born into the line of David. He carried the legal right to the throne of Israel. He was the descendant that every prophecy pointed toward and every enemy had tried to destroy. But Jesus was not just a human king. He was the Most High himself, clothed in human flesh, the Creator walking among his creation. And his mission was not what anyone expected. The rebellious Elohim expected a warrior, a conqueror who would challenge their power with superior force. That is how their system worked, power against power, army against army. But Jesus did not come to fight on their terms. He came to dismantle the entire legal framework that gave them authority in the first place. The foundation of Satan's power, the chief rebel among the Elohim, was not military strength. Since the garden, since Adam and Eve chose to obey the serpent instead of God, humanity had been under a legal claim. Sin had given the adversary a right to accuse. Death had given him a weapon to enforce. Every human who sinned was, in a legal sense, under his jurisdiction, and every human sinned was in a jurisdiction. This is why the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness is so revealing. Satan showed him all the kingdoms of the world and said, "All this authority I will give you, for it has been delivered to me." Jesus did not dispute this claim. Satan had real authority over the nations, the system established after Babel had given him legitimate power. Jesus simply refused to accept it on Satan's terms. Instead, Jesus did something no one anticipated. He lived a perfect human life. He fulfilled every requirement of God's law without a single failure. And then he offered that perfect life as a sacrifice, not to Satan, to the justice of God himself. The cross was not a defeat. It was a legal transaction. The sinless one took the penalty that belonged to the guilty. Death, the ultimate weapon of the adversary, consumed someone it had no right to claim. And in consuming what it could not hold, death itself broke. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because this truth will transform how you see everything. The resurrection was not just a miracle. It was a legal verdict. When Jesus rose from the dead, he proved that death's claim had been satisfied and exceeded. The debt was paid, the chains were broken, the legal foundation of Satan's entire empire crumbled in a single morning. Every accusation the adversary could bring against humanity was answered by the blood of a sinless sacrifice. Every legal right he held over the nations was nullified by someone who owed nothing but paid everything. Colossians 2:15 describes what happened in the spiritual realm at that moment. Having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross. The Elohim who had ruled the nations since Babel were publicly stripped of their authority. The celestial princes who had kept humanity divided and enslaved were exposed and defeated, not by a superior army, not by greater violence, by a sacrifice so complete and so legal that no court in heaven or earth could challenge it. This is what makes the gospel so much bigger than most people realize. It is not just about personal salvation. It is not just about going to heaven when you die. It is about the restoration of the original plan. Humanity was created to rule, to participate in cosmic governance, to partner with the loyal Elohim in administering creation. The rebellion of the Watchers tried to corrupt that plan. The division at Babel tried to bury it. Millennia of spiritual warfare tried to destroy it, but the cross restored it. Through Jesus, humanity is invited back into its original role, not as slaves, not as spectators, as rulers, as sons and daughters of the Most High, as joint heirs with the one who conquered death itself. The Book of Enoch speaks of the elect one, a figure who would sit on the throne of glory and judge the fallen watchers, the Nephilim and the rebellious Elohim. The Ethiopian Church recognized Jesus as that elect one, the fulfillment of Enoch's prophecy, the answer to every cry of the oppressed. And the story is not over. The New Testament makes clear that believers are now participants in this ongoing war. Ephesians 6 says our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, the powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. The system of celestial governance has been legally defeated, but not yet fully dismantled. The rebellious Elohim still operate. Their influence still affects nations, governments, and individuals, but their authority is borrowed time. The verdict has been issued. The sentence is coming. What happens when you understand all of this? Your reading of the Bible transforms completely. Genesis becomes the opening chapter of a cosmic war. The flood becomes a surgical strike against corruption. Babel becomes a response to a threat. The history of Israel becomes the protected channel through which salvation entered the world, and the cross becomes the decisive victory in a war that has raged since before the foundation of the earth. Comment below how this story has changed your understanding. Share this video with everyone who is ready to see the Bible with new eyes. The Ethiopian Bible preserved what others tried to erase. The Elohim are real. The celestial hierarchy is real. The war is real. And your place in this story is real. You were not born by accident. You are here because the Most High placed you here, in this moment, for a purpose that connects to the fabric of creation. The question is, what you will do now that you know. And once you understand this, you understand that the real story, your story, is just beginning.